Hello, 7th graders. This is another 7th grade flipped lesson brought to you by A+Social Studies. It's me, Mr. Ayler. Today we're going to be talking about the Plymouth Colony in 5 W's: the who, the what, the when, the where, the why. All about the Pilgrims. I'm sure coming close to Thanksgiving, we're thinking about the Pilgrims, so let's think about kind of how they got here. We're going to talk about some things having to do with the real Thanksgiving probably later on next week. But here we go. Let's get started. Make sure you have your blue paper out with you today. We are going to be filling in the blanks, taking kind of more traditional notes with our Plymouth Colony document. So let's get started. First, let's talk about who the Pilgrims were. The Pilgrims didn't really call themselves the Pilgrims. They called themselves separatists. And they're a group of separatists from England. What does that mean? They did not like the Church of England, and they wanted to separate from the practices of the churches of England. Back then, if you lived in a certain country, you had to practice the religion of that country, meaning if you lived in England, you had to be a member of the Church of England, or a member of the Anglican Church, as it was called there. If you weren't, some bad stuff happened to you, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Why did the Pilgrims want to separate themselves from the Church of England? They wanted stricter religious practices. They felt the church had gotten away from what was exactly said in the Bible, and they didn't want things in their daily life that were not in the Bible. They dressed very plainly. They did not smoke. They did not drink. They did not have parties or dance or sing and things like that. If it was not in the Bible, it did not happen in the everyday life of the Pilgrims. Let's look at the when. When did the Pilgrims leave? Well, they actually left England twice. They left England for Holland in 1608 for reasons we're going to talk about on the next slide. They left Holland for the New World in 1620 and went back to England for a brief time period to gather supplies, get final contracts signed, get everything they needed ready to get aboard the Mayflower and head over to the New World. So not only did the Pilgrims leave England for Holland, but then kind of the same things happened to them in Holland, and they had to leave again. That begs the question then, why did the Pilgrims leave England not once but twice, and why did they leave Holland? It's because as a group, the Pilgrims faced religious persecution in both England and Holland. Persecution is a word there, underlined, bolded in green. That is a potential $1 million word. The Pilgrims were attacked and jailed due to their religious beliefs. Both kings and queens of England and Holland ridiculed the Pilgrims because of their religious beliefs. Didn't want them to practice their religions, and basically made it so bad for them. The only thing that they had to do would be move, and you can see kind of the King of England there telling the Pilgrims, you need to follow the Church of England or else, and the Pilgrims, all they want to do is practice their own religion. They finally found their opportunity to go into an entirely new area to practice their own religion, and that is why they went. So where did the Pilgrims go? Well, the Pilgrims, they went to Holland. Holland didn't work out for them. So then they go back to England, get their supplies, and about 100 or so of them jump aboard the Mayflower and set sail for the New World. They had kind of negotiated a contract with the Virginia colony to become part of that, with that company, and become kind of close to where Jamestown was where they were hoping to be located. Funny thing happened to the Pilgrims on the way to the Virginia colony. They landed in present-day Massachusetts, which you can see from the map is a couple, almost close to 500 miles or so away from their destined location. So they were a bit off in their location, but they decided to set up their colony there anyways, and they really did land in a particularly good time because it was basically the start of winter when they landed. But they decided to give it a go anyways at what would be called the Plymouth Colony. most important things that the Pilgrims did while they were on board their ship, right before they landed, they created what was called the Mayflower Compact. And the Mayflower Compact outlined the rules and laws of the new colonies, and this was a big deal. This was a very democratic move. They didn't outline a king or a queen or anything like that like they faced in England. And the people were involved in the new colony were involved in making the rules. Now, was it perfectly democratic? No. Young people were involved. Women were involved. But this is the document that was the first attempt of self-government or government by the colonies. All right, this was their first attempt to create that democratic idea that the people in the colony are going to be able to rule over themselves, which is a big step forward during this